This list is not real. This list is my day zero list. And what I'm about to do is revise these opinions based on having now played the patch for a full session with my team and experimented with a number of different things, both myself and with my teammates playing them. So we're going to go through, and I'll go like weapon by weapon, talk about what I thought they were going to be, and then talk about where I think they are now. So, the top tier was immediate consideration for competitive play. And I do still think that the Splatana Stamper is up here. It doesn't lose an awful lot in terms of combo potential by losing the Burst Bomb. It loses a little, but it makes up for it by having Crab, which is just a really valuable special. And the super cool thing I think about the Crab tank for it is that it's much more likely than the current meta Crab weapons, the Dualies and the Splash. It's much more likely than those weapons to be in a position where you want to use a Crab tank naturally, to just already be there, ready to press the special button. The Splash in particular has to do a lot of moving back and forth and kind of plotting its route around the map carefully to make sure that it actually ends up in a spot where it can use the Crab tank well, and that takes a lot of practice to get used to. I don't think it's going to take as much practice to get used to using the Crab tank on this thing. Still feels very strong. Squeezer, I'm going to end up moving down because the splatter color screen it needed to be at least pretty decent, and I just think that the splatter color screen is like probably like a bottom 3 special right now. It does not do an awful lot. You can just walk through it, tank the 30 damage, and play the fight out from there, and you're often fine. There are a couple of ink colors that are a lot more difficult to distinguish from each other, but there's color lock, and I believe the color lock version, if I'm remembering correctly, is pretty easy to see. So at that point, there's just not much to it. It's also very easy to avoid a lot of the time because it's so slow moving. It's not like it's coming toward you with any kind of urgency. So even if you don't have a lot of room to maneuver, a lot of the time you can still find a way around it anyway. So very underwhelming there. The combination of main weapon and sub weapon is still insane. So I'm not going to be dropping it by a lot, but the screen needed to be a little bit better, I think, for this to really be something that you'd want to run. So I feel like it's going to drop a little bit lower. S-Blast also feels great. It's just a really strong short-range blaster, aggressive blaster. I still think it's going to be one of the best choices there. So I think I got that one correct too. This one, I was correct in that it's dependent on its special, and unfortunately I don't think it's a special as good as I thought it was going to be. So I might drop that one a little bit. The end parries as a concept, just dualies that dive in on you with the curling bomb and try to get picks really quickly, is great. And I think that the triple splashdown synergizes with it, but that the triple splashdown is weak enough, dodgeable enough, shootable enough, that it's still not super consistent that you get value out of it. And there's a lot of map geometry that really screws it up. So even if it is something you're trying to run, if it, works with your comp or something, you're still going to want to swap it out for certain map modes. So definitely not as consistent as the Inkjet was going to be on the previous kit. Snipe Rider is still fine. It's a great main weapon. It gets Inkstorm instead of Tacticooler, which it just feels less valuable, but it's also not valuable. It's still a very strong weapon. Just, I feel like it's going to get edged out of a lot of its niches by the cooler version. So this one I think I got pretty right. Then the Custom Blaster, I don't see a reason to use this when you have the S-Blast 91, and I was pretty correct about that. It said dependent on its special, and I'm not impressed by the triple splashdown, and so that does put it down a little bit. I would probably put it, I guess, into the gap or something. Definitely one of the weaker options, I think, from the patch. The Sunder is better than the Vunder, so it's still, a positive addition to the game. But like I said, Tacticolor, like I said, the splatter color screen is one of the weaker specials. If splatter color screen ever becomes something that you want to spam, then this is the weapon because it paints better than the squeezer and also has fewer points for special. So like this is what you run if you want to get a bunch of screens out, and that means that it might someday have a niche if they buff the screen. The problem is right now I don't think the screen is good enough to justify doing that. You'd much prefer to have the main weapon sub weapon combo with the squeezer. All right, looking down here. So remember back when the vanilla Big Swig came out and everyone was like, this is the absolute worst, most god-awful weapon in the game? And then someone figured out, wait a minute, you can use this to cheese the splat zone. We've got another version of that. We've got the Reflux Deco. Everyone was looking at this like, this is the most, like, non-synergistic kit ever. It's the worst. And then it comes out and people are like, wait, you can cheese the zone with this. It's got a reach slider. It's one of the best painting main weapons in the entire game, and it can just keep itself while it paints with the wall, and that's what it's going to do. We used it a little bit on zones, and our Reflux player said it felt kind of good on zones and that they would never use it anyplace else. So this gets raised up into Big Swig tier. Finally, the paintbrush. I think I'm pretty much correct on this, that the main weapon is just too weak right now. Missiles are great for it, and it's a pretty good painting weapon, but you know what else is a pretty good painting weapon that gets missiles? The vanilla Reflux. So I don't think it has too much of a niche for a missile farmer. I don't think it has too much of a niche for like an AoE weapon. You've got the Octobrush, which is going to get into position a lot better and play the Sharking playstyle better. It's going to be more mobile. This weapon really suffers from its lack of mobility. And then you've also got things like buckets that can run forward at people. I don't really see a reason to run this on a competitive team at all. So that's about where I'm at. I'm going to go and fix this up to reflect my day one sensibilities on the weapons, so that you can see the distinction between where it was on day 0 and where it is on day 1. All right. Here is the day 1 set of opinions. So we've changed it from day 0 to day 1. I was a little bit on the fence about the squeezer because it is held back by its special, and I felt like these words described it really well. But I think that it's probably still third in my list here because the combination of squeezer plus autobomb is still nuts. And so in terms of like what I think we're going to see in top level, I think aside from the zones cheese silliness, I think it's probably like the top 3 or 4 are probably what I would expect to see there. But I'm sure these others might have some niche use cases in some cases. Maybe once Splatter Color Screen gets buffed, if it does, this starts to become an interesting idea. I said potential future niche. But there it is. I think that describes it pretty well, where I'm thinking about the new weapons. Let me know what you think, or if there's anything that I missed, haven't been thinking about. I do tend to learn a lot about these weapons in the first few days. So it'd be good to, keep myself updated on what people are thinking and how they're seeing them used.